Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host.
The favourite tennis player of all time is Pete Sampras.
Leanne Hughes.
Yep, Pete Sampras is my childhood tennis idol. I used to love watching him play against Andre Agassi in these epic Australian Open semi-finals. And hello, if you're new to the show, my name is Leanne Hughes and I'm here to help you create unpredictable workshop experiences that predictably work. In the last week and a bit, the show has been very heavily focused on the business of facilitation. That was really to sort of give a bit of momentum behind my invite for Show Up, which is a new private community that I've started. Doors have closed for now. We've got 56 amazing members from all around the world that have joined that community. Doors will be shut while we build this, we get momentum, we get everyone in that community results and moving forward in terms of their marketing efforts. If you'd like to be notified when doors reopen, you can head on over to leannehughes.com/invitation. So this is episode 121 and you'll be listening to a 1-to-1 episode. This one is really facilitation and training focused. So we're back to the core content of this podcast, which is how do we make our workshop experiences not boring? How do we make them engaging, entertaining, useful, and get results for our participants in the group? And so today I went across many different time zones and I reached out to Yoke van Dam, who is based in South Africa. I got to know her, I would say over the last 6 to 12 months, she's been a listener on the podcast. Then we met, Instagram friends, LinkedIn connections, saw her content. She was part of a course together that I ran recently and we've just connected over that. And I love her enthusiasm. I love the way that she asks questions and wants homework. She loves doing the work. And I hope you pick that up from this episode, how much she actually is really diligent in the craft of facilitating, training, and speaking. In this episode, we talk about language and how that's really important, using NLP as a base. And I'll get her to explain what that is. It is short. The acronym is for neuro linguistic programming, but Yoke actually explains it in some really helpful detail and also provides some cool stories on where she's used it and how it's worked really effectively. So this will give you a bit of insight into the way that you can structure your questions and the way that you talk to your groups during workshops. She also shares how she scores some amazing PR opportunities. Now, this helps because Yoke has come from a publishing background. So she's just telling us what people within that industry want, which makes it really easy. We also talk about how in workshops we know the things, but we still don't end up doing them. So how can we actually get knowledge and turn it into behavior change? And as well as many other things. So you're in for a great treat listening to Yoke. So who is she? Well, she is a catalyst for change, whether in person, for a team, or an entire company. She's a qualified behavioral change and leadership coach, public speaker, facilitator, trainer, and sales consultant with over 16 years experience. Specialising in neuro-linguistic programming, Yoke trains and coaches business leaders, executives, sales teams, and individual staff members the tangible skills that they need to deliver the outcomes they want. She also presents keynotes in corporates and other settings to bring about positive change. Her training specialties include sales, persuasion, presentation, and emotional intelligence, and she balances theory with practical solutions. Hear, hear. With her passion, she founded Why Connect in 2017. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Yoke. If you'd like to reach out and thank her for her amazing contribution to this show, all of her contact details will be in the show notes for this one at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 121. Very easy to remember that episode. And of course, if you'd like to continue the conversation when the show is over, join the community of over 850 people, facilitators, trainers just like you, on the free Facebook group called The Flip Chart. Link for that is also in the show notes. All right, let me know how you go with this one and enjoy the listen. Here we go. I am delighted to welcome onto the First Time Facilitator podcast, Yoke van Dam. Yoke, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Leanne. It's so exciting to be here, all the way from South Africa.
I know you've got me on an afternoon call. I'm not my best in the afternoon. I've had a few calls today, hopefully warming up for this podcast interview. I've been so excited seeing this in my diary. So thanks so much for jumping on the mic. Can you please explain that to our listeners? You know, you listen to the show. I love just finding out a bit about all the facilitator backgrounds because people come from all different industries. And what's your story?
I was finding myself in the publishing industry for quite a few years, straight after varsity, and I was marketing and selling textbooks and really feeling super unfulfilled. I remember a day going to universities and speaking to university lecturers and just thinking like, if I'd done now, I would have definitely not used all of my talents. And a few years later, I attended a presentation course by a lady, Deshan Kaisel, a professional keynote speaker in South Africa. And she actually spoke about how she's a mountaineer and how she climbs the 7 summits. So she climbed Everest at that stage about 5 times. She's supposed to go next year. I don't know if that's going to happen with everything that's happening with an all-women group. And she comes back and will speak about endurance, self-discipline. And then she was a facilitator and trainer as well. And I was like, dream job. That's what I want to do. So I ran over to her and said, how do you do this? How do you get into the speaking and training industry? And she said at that stage, that was 2008, she said, there's no formal route, but maybe join Toastmasters. So I did 10 years of Toastmasters, 2008 till 2018, and then got my distinguished Toastmasters. And it was funny because I did do pivots in my career. I did go and do a NLP practitioners course, internationally accredited in 2011 to get more into coaching. But I would say like my highlight of my career and where I learned everything to do about facilitation and where I got the confidence was at Toastmasters because it was a safe environment. People were kind of like cheering me on. And I realized if these doctors, lawyers, engineers, these top-end professionals, if they were finding value in my training because I became a Toastmaster accredited trainer for the leaders. So I would get onto big stages, training all of the district officers. If they finding value and motivation in my message, other people would as well, you know. So for years, I was never in management positions or anything like that. But in Toastmasters in the ranks, I really became that servant leader. So I actually got a comment on Facebook just now about 4 or 5 years ago where I arranged a culture event at a conference in Johannesburg, and how we got poets involved and how we got storytelling experts involved and how we had a wine tasting. So I always had like so much more fun in my after hours than at work, you know, until I finally pivoted and started doing just training for Entrepreneur Magazine when I was in corporate sales there. And then that boss of mine left and he actually created a sales training position for me at AutoTrader. So then I was actually for the first time paid in 2014, full-time in a position. But I'd been doing this freelance after hours, doing work for clients, getting paid here or there. So I really believe in like the Malcolm Gladwell outliers that, you know, you have to do your 10,000 hours. So for me, it was literally putting in the hours so that I really felt, you know, I'd actually learned everything there is to know about public speaking and training. And what was really valuable of Toastmasters was when I became an accredited trainer there, they actually put you through tests. You know, you had to deal with a difficult crowd. There was a lot of criteria that you had to be good enough to do it.
Super useful, yeah.
Which was nice. And also like the mentorship and the training. So that was like very encouraging for me in the process. You know, so that's just in a nutshell. So I started my own business then in 2017. So that's been now 3 years that I've been out on my own. And that journey has also been very interesting. So highlights have been, I've done some international work in Pakistan, which is very interesting. And recently I also did a webinar with people that had an audience in Dubai and Pakistan, you know, in the UAE as well. So it's actually becoming an interesting market. So now with lockdown, there's even opportunities to do a lot of international work if you don't have to travel, which is quite nice, you know, so you can do it from the comfort of your home and you don't have to have all the time away from your family.
Funny you say that, because often when I love international work, but you're right, I'd rather just teleport over to the country rather than having to like check in and all that, which I kind of miss now. But you're right, and I think on the Flip Chart Facebook group, I think it was Ken that posted, "Oh, I've actually just realised the opportunity that is available, that we can actually serve a global market now," which is awesome. But I want to take it back to your when you were selling those books and you thought, oh my goodness, like if I died tomorrow, I'm not fulfilled. What if, so what you've quickly done is you've mapped out your process for discovering what you could do. And it was, as you mentioned, things that were outside of your day job. You were looking for opportunities outside, which then fueled you and then gave you sort of, it was a nice way to test to see, you know, what you were interested in. So what do you focus on now in the 3 years in your business? What are your sort of specialties? What have you nailed down on in terms of your niche?
So the one specifically has been presentation skills, because what I'd found in my 10,000 hours, through all of those 10 years in Toastmasters, I was always doing mentoring speakers on their speeches, you know, and I would see them winning contests and actually using it in the work context. There was actually a guy specifically that I helped, and he had to do a presentation at Toastmasters, and we really worked on his call to action. And what ended up happening is he actually ended up raising a lot of money for an NGO from a lady in the audience at Toastmasters. So I actually have case studies of actual things that worked where people managed to, you know, raise money, win bids. So right now, I've been doing the presentation skills training for 3 years on my own, but I bring a lot of NLP into it. And then it also leads to a lot of one-on-one work. And what's quite nice there is if a person has the foundation, you can go so much more deeper. So I've had a few repeat clients come to me afterwards, and then they'll say they have to go do a procurement pitch at one of the major banks. And because they have the foundation, they already come with a core story structure, they already know so much, and you can actually get much further versus a blank slate where a person knows nothing, you know. So for me, I think actually doing work, repeat work with specific clients actually makes the work much deeper. So that's the one area. And then the others that I'm really passionate about is when I went on my own, I really wanted to make a difference on a behavioral change level. So I was all about bringing in the NLP side. So because when I was in Toastmasters, I saw you don't have to be a manager or a leader to actually bring massive change in an organization. You could actually bring it from below. You could start a wildfire in a positive way, you know. So I wanted that. So like the change happening from the inside in individuals and then rippling out. So what I've started seeing is crazy. So last year with my EQ course, I was contacted by a company who they were having huge dysfunction with the executive team, and they were all like fighting with each other, gossiping, and they make crucial decisions regarding a medical industry. And what ended up happening is we ended up actually bringing such funky people on board. So that's what I also found as entrepreneurs. You need to look at, are you the only person that's needed, or are there other people that you could bring in? So I brought in a lady that does e-colors, personality tests, and then I did areas based on Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, which I really love. And then, you know, there were all the different EQ elements. And then I had like a mini team build. I brought in my adventure bootcamp instructor. So not to do physical exercise, it was actually like games. It was super creative, but based on the 5 dysfunctions. So she got all of them to really think. So she did things around popular culture, about building models. There was such creative things which they really found difficult to do, and I really laughed in my sleeve because they were all medical experts, very smart, and yeah, they were struggling with these things. And I was like, yeah, you know, you might be really smart in your area, but there are other areas in terms of EQ that you've never learned about. So sometimes as a facilitator, you sit with a bit of imposter syndrome when you see these people with super high IQ in their area, and you're really struggling to know, like, what can I possibly teach these people? And that was quite nice to see the value they found. Okay, but just to get to the point is, so afterwards, I then found that just doing a 2-day program is not always enough to actually initiate the change. After that, I then did follow-up programs, and it actually became a journey and actually got them committed to coaching over a period of months individually. And after that period, so that was like last year, July, and then up to middle March this year, I sat with the top exco and they said to me, they cannot compare the group of people that they're sitting with now compared to who they had. So the change that they see, how less reactive they are, how emotionally mature they've become, how proactive they are. So I found, you can teach them a lot of models and theories and things and give them exercises in the training, but where the deep work really comes is the repeat work and if they actually implement. And if you can have that sense of accountability where the implementation actually happens and you have that one-on-one relationship with them, that's really where you start seeing huge growth. So for me, that was like rewarding because I was like, change is actually now happening. It's not just in my own mind or a pie in the sky kind of thing, so that's more the kind of thing I want to do.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of pressure if you just call yourself a facilitator that sweeps in and runs a 2-day program and then the company are like, all right, we tick that off. Now where's the change? And it absolutely doesn't happen. We know this. We learn all these things. I listen to like how many podcasts a week am I implementing? If I implemented maybe 20% of the stuff, oh my gosh, how good. But I reckon it's about 2%, right, of what I hear. So I absolutely agree that the repetition is important. Can you please explain to our listeners what NLP stands for, what it is, and why it's so powerful in helping people facilitate that change in terms of behaviour?
So NLP stands for neuro linguistic programming. So it really has to do with the neural pathways in your brain. So what it's all about is somewhere in your life, what usually happens, for instance, in my presentation training, what I find is people often sit with confidence issues. So somewhere in their life, someone said to them, you're not good with public speaking, or they had a fright, or they had a confidence stumble. So what ended up happening is they've now created a neural pathway to say whenever they get in front of a crowd, certain things will start to happen. So for instance, their face will go red, so they'll start sweating, they'll start stammering. So they've actually created a strategy so that their brain actually fires that whenever that moment happens. So when you do coaching one-on-one, what's really powerful is you can actually help a person change that pathway so that that doesn't happen anymore, But how I use it in training is to help them to change the pattern. So for instance, in my presentation skills, we do a lot of visualizations. So I say to the audience, and this is something I train on, is your brain can't hear the word not. So if I'm telling myself a negative thing, in my mind, I'm creating a picture of it. So if I say to myself, I'm really scared right now, I'm actually creating a picture in my mind and I'm instructing myself to go into the negative state. Well, if I say to myself, so I'm like, let's say I'm feeling scared, now I put it in the positive and I put not in front of it. So how I would like to feel is I would like to feel confident, but I'm not feeling confident. So I say, I'm not feeling so confident right now. My brain can't hear the word not, which means that because I'm reframing, I'll actually start feeling more confident. So that's just one of the ways that you can do it in your own brain. And in the training specifically, you could reframe things. So if a person says something really disruptive or negative, you reframe it into the positive. So if they say, this is so boring, we hate this training, I'm just giving an extreme example.
That's our worst nightmare.
You could say, it looks like you're not finding it so interesting right now. It looks like you're not so relaxed and not so calm and not so energized. So what ends up happening is a lot of trainers will go and they call it the graveyard shift, like straight after lunch, and they'll say, guys, I see you feeling so tired right now. What you're doing is you're telling them they're tired and you're making them more tired and you're putting attention on it. So you should say what you want and put not in front of it, and you're actually like tricking their brain out of it. So
I see you're not so energized.
You see what I mean? So for instance, and it's so powerful. So I once went with a salesperson when I was still at Auto Trader, and the client said, "We really hate your business and we want to cancel, and I'm so furious, and we just have not had the service." And so I was coming from Johannesburg, and I was at the coast in Durban, and I was coaching this salesperson, and I just tipped in and I said, "I can see you're not so happy right now, and maybe you haven't felt like you've had the best service, but we're here and we want to iron out everything and just make it flow smoothly." So I focused on the solution.
Wow, that's really powerful.
And immediately he calmed down, so that's just like one of the techniques, and you call it reframing.
That is like a massive superpower. So you learnt this in NLP, and like I said before, you can learn these things and then it's applying it. So how did you then go, right, okay, because I've read the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, and he talks about like there's little hacks in it about words you should say and how you should phrase sentences, but I don't do it 100% of the time. So how did you start implementing this in those high stakes situations?
Okay, so crazy situation. This wasn't facilitation, but I was at a stage I was working at Entrepreneur Magazine, and we had a monthly team build, okay? And every team had the opportunity to put it together, and our budget was very little, so we decided to spend everything on drinks. And then we took it all and we went to a botanical gardens, beautiful botanical gardens in Johannesburg, in Morentia, anyway. And we decided we're going to do these sports. In Afrikaans, we call it Buddha sports. So it's kind of things like running with an egg, and we're going to throw water balloons, like those kinds of things. So it wasn't going to cost us the activities, and we were going to do these war cries and anything. Anyway, so we got there, and it's always for free. It's always an open park, but what we didn't know is the moment your size becomes bigger, you actually have to book and pay, and you need confirmation to be there. So while we're there, the security guards come, and then everyone just says to me, and it was just, I think, a year after I did my NLP practitioners, they say, "Yoke, you need to handle this, use your superpower." Anyway, so like no pressure. So I have to follow the security guard to the other side of the park all the time. I'm like, okay, I don't know if this is the safest, running away from an entire group with a man on the other side of a, park anyway, but let's just deal with it. So I went, and there was this really mean lady, and she said to me, "You guys didn't book, you didn't pay, and you have to leave." And I was like, okay, I need to do some positive installing because we need to make this happen. So I said to her, "Are you going to be the person that's going to help our group to do this sports in a safe space?" And she just kept quiet. And then I said, "What will make it possible for us to still do our activities here today?" So I basically instructed her mind. So what happens if you ask the question, the person goes into like Google search mode. And I'm sure you've had that where, someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, and 3:00 in the morning, you're like, and you get up and you can't go back to sleep because you wish you said that. It's your mind's only giving you the answer. So you should also be careful the kind of questions you ask, because you're giving someone else's Google in their mind a question. So anyway, so she kept quiet, and then she said, "Move out of the rose garden, 200 meters to the right." So I just ran back, and because basically I had asked her if we can pay, and I had my cell phone, I wanted to do an EFT, and she said the booking system's closed, they can't. So that's why I had to go the route of how will it be possible, But also being careful of your tone, not sounding sarcastic, like really being positive, neutral, win-win. And then so we ended up actually just moving at group. So then they kind of like went into, you call it groupthink. So the person that's the most authoritative directs the group. So I just got there, and I just basically took control of all of these people, said, "Everyone pick up the tables, move it to the right." And they were like sheep. They literally just did it. And my mouth nearly fell open. I was like, oh my goodness, this is happening. People are this whole huge group. And I think that's literally, what an MC does, or when you are the facilitator, you need to, like you said in our training, you need to be the conductor of the orchestra, and you just need to take control, because people feel like you need to keep them safe, and you need to make sure that the music is amazing.
Yeah, and people like having a level of certainty as well. And I think you're right. If we're the facilitator or someone stepping up in the front of a room, we already have the status. It is remarkable, the stuff that I've asked groups to do with, with a minute of walking into a room, they've just met me and they're all standing up and switching partners and laughing, and you're like, it's actually, yeah. And then to have, I know a bit about NLP, but I've had a couple of people actually, not on this podcast, but tell me that I should do a program because it is so powerful in the way that you frame questions. And that's another role of facilitation, is framing a question, because that can really dictate what happens, where the conversation goes, if it's a leading question or if you're like installing something positive.
That's exactly.
Cool phrase. That's a cool phrase. Yeah.
But what I want to encourage you, should you do a program, do something proper. Don't do a 3-day crash course. So the course that I did it was also internationally accredited, but it was months of work. It was deep work. It was every second weekend we had to do practice sessions. So, but what is so nice, and that's what other friends that also did the course in future years said to me, is say it's like part of your DNA. Like, how do you remember this? But I think it's also how we ingrained it when we were doing it. So there the focus was very much on if you're actually helping a person make a behavioral change, one-on-one, they're really struggling with something. But then if you implement it, the moment you start implementing it in the training context, and like you say, when I saw the magic start to happen was when I was starting to do brainstorming sessions at Toastmasters. So I was using a facilitation manual. And when I started totally stepping out of it and like an outside perspective and not forcing my opinion on everyone, I think that was something you said when you were talking about the listening tour that you had. You were just literally listening. You were asking questions and you were listening. And that's an art. That's really hard work to then take what the person says, delve a bit deeper, because sometimes when you interview people, a co-host will sit there and they'll just have the questions, but they won't actually listen to the person, and they won't actually be able to then take the words and delve deeper. And that's what NLP does. You use the person's words as a question to then delve deeper. So like right now you would then say, words, what do you mean by that? Or taking the words, making it deeper, and that becomes just the way you're asking it becomes a question. And you can use that in training all of the time to clarify and delve deeper.
Such a cool strategy. Thank you. And you're right about it. It's funny, listening is really hard. Like, I think we take it for granted and we think, oh gosh, it's harder to speak.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. Oh my gosh. I'm going to be walking away like berating myself now every time. But what you said about repeating, like just using the words to delve deeper, I think I read some study somewhere where they set up this experiment in a restaurant, and there were 2 waiters. One waiter was told to just go around and be as charming and charismatic as possible and to be as serving to the customers. The other waiter was told to just repeat the 3 last words that someone said to them back at them.
Exactly.
At the end of the night, they looked at the tips, and the second waiter had the most tips just by repeating the words back.
I had an amazing aha moment. I was actually chatting to a lady that wants to use me for facilitation yesterday, and I said to her, one of the best strategies you can use is do a survey with your delegates before your training course. So kind of like what you also do, get a bit of a needs analysis and find out where they're at, find out what they're really struggling with. And then when you start the course, you use their words. So I did that once. Many years ago, I was at University of Pretoria. That's where I was doing my presentation course for alumni. And then I found a lot of lecturers actually coming. And then one of the ladies, she's actually she's in dentistry, ethics in dentistry. And she said to me, oh my goodness, you took our words and you used it and it meant so much. And I was like, wow, it's instant rapport. People feel, they don't even know you. And then they see the care that you took in taking their words, just putting it on a screen and saying it back to them. They feel like you know them and you care, so it's a simple thing you can do.
I was even just thinking about what you were saying then about repeating the words back. So really for my interviews, I don't need to prepare anything. I just need to echo. Yeah, that being another strategy. Now, Yoke, you've been doing a lot of work with like all of us, moving sessions online and presentation skills. That's something you kind of want to do in person, right? You want to be able to do the body language and all, and get that energy and excitement and get people getting scared of walking in front of a room. What are some of your strategies? How are you coping with it, moving all of your sessions online?
So that's really been very interesting because I was so petrified so my course, I literally started during lockdown, and I just decided, let me just do this because what I found is a lot of people in South Africa are finding it super overwhelming to do their sales pitches online now. So I realized that, where a person would usually just pop in their car, drive to a client, and then do the presentation there or sit with them, have a cup of coffee, they're now finding it super overwhelming to be behind a screen. And, they're not really even good. And that's where your body language, your eye contact is so many technicalities around it. And then also they don't know how to put a message together. So I found a niche need there to kind of elaborate a bit more on my course, to also add things like, if you now need to build rapport and trust with the client, some of it might have to be through doing a webinar or doing videos like what you're doing with your show up thing now. It's specifically people are going to do research online, and what are they going to find, and would they then want to actually have a Zoom meeting with you or not? So your presentation style on screen has to be so much better than, you can't just wing it. You need to actually be able to build trust and rapport there.
Yeah.
And so that actually became a core need, and it's been super interesting. So the one guy, to give you an idea, is actually in the car sales. He's a second-hand car salesperson. And stats shows, I told you about that the other day.
But they don't have the best reputation, do they?
They say people trust them 2%. So what I said to him, if you can stand out from the crowd and you start building your brand and doing videos and speaking about your 30 years of experience and start talking about interesting things in the car industry, it'll make a difference. People from different areas in the country, if they can't drive to you and they want to do the transaction online and then get delivery later, it will be easier for them, because they'll be like, this is not a scam, this is a real person. So he has even been doing videos of his cars now, and now he's going to do voiceovers and just little introductory videos, and his sales leads or his conversions are going up. It's crazy. So I would never think that would be an ideal client of mine, but look at that, So because most of the people have really been bankers, people in finance, people in sales and marketing teams, So for me, it's also been a bit challenging. So I've just had to learn as I go. So I'm part of the professional speakers in South Africa. I've been obviously following your podcast, and then there's a few others, the remote speaking Facebook group. So just trying to learn and apply various strategies of people. So my husband actually bought lighting for us to do photos with, because he is a hobbyist landscape photographer, and then he actually took wax paper and built this light diffuser and everything. So I ended up having this lighting actually a year before everything happened. So when we went into serious lockdown, we weren't even able to get any IT equipment. So luckily I had lights, So it's working with what you have. Sometimes you just need to get out of your mindset and be like, what can I do? Do I have internet connection? Do I have Zoom? Let me go into a better thing. Start with what you have. I think what we tend to do is we tend to overcomplicate and think that we need to be world class. And yet our content is so amazing, it can actually be delivered in a way that can actually help people. So different things that I've done is I've done the thing where many of the times I would stand, so to have different energy. And then videos I obviously can't show in Zoom, so I also created a Slack channel for interaction. I also gave them homework every week. So one of the weeks I actually had to present live, and then what's quite nice with Zoom is because it's captured on video, instantly afterwards they're going to get their own video and then they can do the homework looking at the video. So usually you would need to record that, but now the platform actually helps with that, So one of the girls, she said she was doing videos at home before she had to do a live presentation, and she was so boring. And when she stepped into the room with our group, so we're like a group of 8, she said suddenly her energy just kicked in. And I think you spoke about that. I love that one live where you spoke about, your if you step up and you step into the energy, and it's a different energy than when you're just engaging with friends, when you're actually live in a training session or in a live, And I saw that transformation happen with her. So it's funny. You would think it's only face-to-face, but virtually it happens as well.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that example up. And I was actually on a call before. I was talking to a girl that she wanted to pre-record her online programs, and we had a conversation around this too. But there is something magical about when you're sitting in front of a camera. There's a 3, 2, 1 countdown. You can't edit it. You're live. It's like you just got to keep going. And what's encouraging is that some things kick into gear. You know that you can't stop and re-record it, so you just keep going. That's why I think when people do videos, it's usually their first take that's the best. But if you have a philosophy, I'll keep doing it until I get it perfect, you could be there a while.
Yeah, I have this amazing business coach, and he just basically said, right now people don't have the time to just take their time. You need to operate at a sprint. You can't take such a long time because otherwise your business will fail. So you need to see what's available, go for it, and make it the best possible. And that's where things that I learned from you, for instance, like the empathy map has really helped me delve much deeper into who the audience is. So you're actually looking at their pain points and really helping them from their point of the world. So that's why I actually adapted the course, looking at everyone's needs, and I actually have coaching set up with them as well, so to help them with their needs. So obviously the car salesperson's needs is different from the lady that's in events in the touring industry, that's different from the leadership expert, so everyone has different needs, and it's about meeting them where they're at. So I think it's all about meeting the outcome, and that's what I think training is about. It's like meeting the outcome, but also knowing, setting clear expectations, because some of them can't necessarily be met in a group environment. Then they would need to do one-on-one paid work.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right, it's being very clear with that upfront and going, look, this is the scope of what we're doing in the workshop. And if you do need additional help, here are some options. So that's really good. Hey, I want to hear a bit about your webinar on creating PR, because we've never had a facilitator on this show talk about that, how we create our own news storm. So do you have any tips, people that are listening that do struggle with getting a bit of promotion, a bit of publicity? What are some things that they can do to attract that?
Yes. So when I was at Entrepreneur Magazine, that's actually where I learned this, because our editor was very picky on the kind of content she put in there. So some publications, for instance, if you're looking at magazines or print, and I know a lot of magazines have even closed down, but now it would be online publications or, websites and that, and then we'll look at other kind of media. So there, you had to actually look at what is a style guide. So if you're trying to pitch for a specific publication, can you see what is the feature you would like to be in? Why would you fit it with that specific target audience? And what kind of topics do they cover, and what kind of problems do they have that you would be able to give advice on? So what I did is I contacted various places, even radio shows, trying to find out, these are my subject expertise. These are the kind of audiences that would benefit from it. Do you have a business segment? Do you have an area for entrepreneurs that need help specifically with presentation skills, emotional intelligence, leadership? And then they actually pointed me in the right direction of who to contact. So it would be contacting a producer of a radio show or the editor of a magazine or a website and actually pitching the specific topics and the kind of problems you could address. And then there's also certain, I know in South Africa, there's some kind of media alerts where they actually, if you can subscribe for it, they actually, and I've managed to get quite a lot out of that, and that would usually be interviews of a journalist for a magazine or print or whatever. So I, for instance, had a lady's put on there that she wanted a coach to help her with confidence and overcoming negativity. So we did I actually did an NLP process coaching with her, and then spoke to her about it. And then she actually explained in the article the value of NLP. How did she find the process? And the article was only published actually quite a few months after that, because magazines have a lead time of 2 to 3 months, depending on the content they put together and when it gets published. So she actually said to me her positivity stayed for quite a few months after that process. So that was like really powerful to hear. And then those journalists could potentially open doors for you as well. So then you ask, once it's in publication, you ask for the PDF. That's also what I learned when I was at the magazine, because I was always trying to pitch for my clients, but they would never just take a press release and dump it in there. So if you're looking for a really quality publication, you must almost either go to a bookstore and find the kind of magazine that's elite enough that you would want to be in. So are they, those specific publications that your kind of audience would be consuming? And it's not about people actually finding your article in there, because that's also like a needle in the haystack, but it's all about you get that, and then afterwards what you also do is you either buy quite a few copies, or you afterwards, a few months afterwards, ask the magazine if you can't just get some of the free copies or get them at 50% discount. So then the funny thing is what I did. So I had a double-page spread in Entrepreneur magazine on fight and flight mode, emotional intelligence, how to get out of that, and what's the ramifications on your business, because staff leave, you lose your best contracts if people just have these emotional outbursts, which is what's happening in lockdown now. People are losing some of their best staff because they're not able to regulate their own emotions. Anyway, so then I would go to clients and I would take a copy of the magazine along and open it, and immediately there's that credibility in their mouth kind of like drops open. So the moment they see you in print or afterwards, you say, I just want to leave you with something. If you're still considering doing business with me, there's an article that I wrote, and then you put a little post-it note in there, that it's flagged, and immediately. So even, I know that you've spoken about the fact that you don't have a book yet. If you get into any kind of publishing, there's so much credibility, even if it's an article in a magazine, or even if it's a newspaper publication. And then you post the PDF, you could post it on your website. So, and then further on, so let's say you get it on radio or podcast or that, you can always get the podcast recording and then share it on social or put it on a specific media page on your website. So I found it's funny. So originally you start asking people. So that's what I was doing, because I decided I was following a guy, Douglas Kruger, in South Africa, and he said, how you build credibility is where it's the framework of a bit of fame, knowledge, and personality where they come together. So he said you need to get known in your market. So it's not that you need to do mass media, but you need to bring that element of credibility in the market. So I decided I need to get on radio just to get the credibility of that, So that's how I started pitching. And then later on, other people, when they started following me on social media, they would say to me, please send us a bio. We would love you to have you on our radio show. But because now they've seen you've done this before. Yes. So the moment you've done something, they immediately start inviting you back, So that's for podcasts, vlogs. It kind of just starts accumulating, and then people start referring you. So just start, and then things will come your way as well, So, and I just think it adds to your credibility. So my mentor in NLP always said, Cedric Theoduso, he said, people find more value in what others say about you than what you say about yourself.
Absolutely.
So the moment you get, and that's where, when I studied publishing, and it was all about books at that stage, and there's such a big debate. I mean, so many people are self-publishing. I so struggle with this, because I will probably start with self-publishing, but because I know the value of getting into a proper publishing house and how much more credible that is, but it's also so hard. But should you be able to just get any kind of PR in publications on other people's websites so that when people Google you, they find you in other places than just on your own website. And that's what I would advise, So in the webinar, we spoke about a bit about traditional media, but then also went over into like the kind of different media you have now. So in the past, it would be TV. Now you can do Insta TV or TikTok. And, it would start with radio. Now there's podcasts. And like also looking at you could have a bit of a juggle between them. It doesn't just have to be traditional. Social media is also a great way of getting publicity for you. And then putting the proper curated media content on your social media, it then just shows, it just escalates your credibility immediately. So I had people after listening to I would send them a quote and like my profile, and then I said, by the way, here's a radio interview regarding sales management that I had with Radio Today. And the guy didn't even look at my quote or my proposal or my bio. He just sat down and listened to the whole thing and then phoned me and said, okay, I don't need you to pitch to me. Just come for the briefing. I'm going to use you.
That's really cool.
Immediately escalated. So I think for a trainer, you want people to experience you. So one of the best ways is probably through videos, podcasts, radio kind of thing, TV, where they feel like they get to know you and they feel that they are getting a snippet of the content, and that's really where the magic happens, because it takes quite a bit of time to convince a person just in a meeting, and you can only have so many meetings with people.
Yeah.
Further in the process, they further in the decision-making process, they like you already, you're much further ahead.
Definitely. And I think that's why I really love attraction marketing, because I don't want to have to spend my time convincing someone to work with me. I just want people to feel compelled and like that magnet. And I think that's why was it back in the 80s, the 70s or 80s, there was that red sticker which said, as seen on TV. It just boosted your social proof and your credibility.
Oh, wow.
And so many different ways that you can do it, not just TV now, as you said, all those different avenues. Yoke, we're coming to the end of our conversation, which is you've got so much more that you can give. If our listeners would love to find out more about, gosh, you do a lot of really interesting pieces of work, and I've loved talking about the NLP, the pitching online, and how we can build our social proof. If people would love to know more about you, check out some of your webinars. We can now, because we don't have to go to South Africa to see you. Where should we send them?
They're going to go to my website, www.y-connect.biz, and we'll put the rest of the links in the show notes. Because in there's obviously links from our website. You can go to all my social media, but I think the easiest to get the most links is once you're on the Instagram, and that's the link that we'll put, the link tree, actually takes you through to some of the most relevant current things that's happening. And then they could easily subscribe to webinars or to getting videos from previous webinars, guides, sales guides, PR guides, quite a variety of cool tools, as you call them, Leanne.
Yeah, it's a nice little phrase. Wow, you've done an awful lot during this time and over the 3 years, developing all those resources and videos. So congratulations, and it's been awesome getting to know you just through the power of podcasting. So definitely suggest reaching out to Yoke and checking out a link tree, which will be in show notes. And absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for helping me think about reprogramming the self-talk and the questions. I really appreciated that. So thank you.
And thank you for all your inspiration. You're such a guide and a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think you're helping so many facilitators around the world. And especially your courses really helped me sexy things up a bit. That's really been very helpful. So guys, go to Leanne's course.
Oh gosh, sharing the love. Thank you for that social proof. Awesome. Thanks again. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Yoke on today's podcast. Reach out to her and share what's one thing that you learnt from this episode. I'm sure she would love to hear from you. If you like the podcast, if you find it useful, I would love some help. If you can hop onto Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts and submit a review so I've got a bit of social proof. I would love that. It would help out the show a lot and also be able to get it into more ears. And hopefully with more listens to the show, we can impact more facilitators and trainers and help them deliver unforgettable workshop experiences. Unforgettable in a good way. Chat to you next week.